had created the world, He created another world, and that world is called Olam HaTohu. And of course, there was a reason for that. And we'll see maybe what it is. In that light, in that world, as Chazal tell us, there were many lights and few vessels to hold on that light. As a result of that, those vessels shattered, they broke, and then God created what we call our world. And our world, in Lashon HaKabbalah, it's called Olam HaTikun. And that world, our world, is made of many vessels and little light. Just the other way around. And that in return allows us to continue functioning and to continue existing. In Kabbalah, the term light is really a term that is used to describe a projection of spiritual energy. And vessels are spiritual powers that direct this light. They define the light and they focus it. For example, the word neshama, soul, our neshama, is a light. And the body, our body, is the kli, is the vessel. So a world, when we use the word world, whether it's a physical world or a spiritual world, is constituted from lights that come about from that spiritual power in order to reveal, in order to give, and from the vessels that comes from that spiritual power, that their purpose is really to define and to put into boundaries. And if they're not really appropriate, there is a collapse. They collapse and then they broke and they shell. And that was the reason. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, when He created the world, He wanted that our world will be built on the ruins of the previous world, which is the Olam HaTohu, as we said before, in order for us to be able to kind of dive underneath the surface, and in order to be what we call to pull out from it the sparks of holiness that were hidden within that cold rabble of the old world, and at the end to be able to mix together or to combine together those two realities, and we would be able to receive this awesome, great light of the world of Tohu in a prepared, well-maintained vessels that could actually hold them. All right, that's it for the day. So now, the Mekubalim see Esav and Yaakov, what they represent, the those cosmic twins, as they call them, what they call the Tohu V'Tikun, the initial world and the fix-up of this world. Esav represents the initial energy. It's very strong energy, very wild energy of the world of Tohu, which is in a way a destructive power. It's raw, sheer power. And the reason why is that because it's lacking the discipline and the control that would be able to channel this energy into a constructive rather than a destructive manner. Now, you could see from that, for example, just like as a side thing, that lack of discipline and lack of self-control, not being controlling, having self-control, is a recipe for disaster. You need to have discipline. You must have self-control. So, it is that power of Olam HaTohu that Esav represents, to that matter, is very strong, very extremely powerful, and much more overwhelming than that well-restrained energy and restrained powers that really propel an organized and fixed world and so on and so forth, which is represented by Yaakov Avinu. As we said, Yaakov Avinu is a person of sitting down in your tent and so on and so forth. Esav is the guy, he's going out, putting traps. He's the, I guess, the first mountain man out there, you know? I like mountain men. And he is that brute, unrefined power, but it is extremely powerful. And maybe one of the things that I'm going to tell you today might surprise you, but I do believe that it has to be said. So we'll see what it is. So therefore, as we said before, the challenge is really to be able to connect these cosmic twins together and to be able to really utilize the initial thought of creating the world the way it is. And in a way, by doing so, we become partners in creation. Because we are, in a way, fixing the world. And the reason it's being done is to be able to utilize the powers that were given to both entities, Yaakov and Esav, that organized vessels to the sheer power and lives to be able to put them together for the best possible thing that really is going to be a completely different world altogether. And that is going to be, we will be able to achieve great things in this world. We're going to take the sheer power. It's almost like taking a nuclear reactor and then either being able, I mean, nuclear energy by itself is very powerful. Such a hug from the Bergman, by the way. So, you know, a nuclear reactor is very, it maybe is a good example. You can do wonderful thing with a nuclear reactor. You can, you know, give electricity for millions of people, almost for free, if not for free. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't do it for free, to tell you the truth. It's not burning oil or something or coal that they have to, you know, it's there just producing energy. Or you can take a nuclear reactor and make it into an extremely destructive instrument of complete chaos and horror. These are the Yaakov and Esav. And if you can see the reactor, we put it into water, we put it in, you know, surrounded with water and so on and so on and so forth. So that's what it is. So that struggle, for example, to be able, or that effort to be able to reach that combination is the story of basically Yaakov and Esav throughout the Torah, as we have it. And in a way, the whole essence of human history is also could be codified within that struggle of trying to combine and the opposing, you know, dealing with the opposing forces of Yaakov and Esav together. So Esav and Yaakov come out from the same womb. They come from, anybody remembers? Who was their mother? Rivka. Oh, guys, man, he was like stoned or something. You know, Rivka, yeah. So he came from the same womb, and as we know that they started. I mean, they weren't feeling comfortable from each other from the very beginning. Inside her stomach, they were tumbling and turning, and you know, and whatever they were doing there. And the efforts are really should I say assigned to an effort to try to come back together as a functioning family, to basically teach them and to how to be one unit, you know, one nation under God, as they say. But this conflict is so great and vast that it's not something that you could probably solve within one lifetime. And I am not here referring to about reincarnation, all kind of stuff like this. It is a long process. This is not just Yaakov and Esav. These are the two forces in which the worlds were created, represented by the qualities of Yaakov and Esav and whoever came out of that. But it will take thousands of years to fix that, to bring things into harmony like that. Even if you're talking about such a tremendous and long lifespan like Yaakov Avinu had, the Yaakov Avinu lived for like about 147 years. Those powers that they had, between them, Yaakov and Esav, are just too much to even try to start doing. But they started something, but really to get somewhere. So the forces of Tohu, which is represented by Esav, are so powerful. It takes a national effort to put them together, and that's basically us. And the reason is because the kelim, the vessels, are too... we need to strengthen the vessels. We need to get those vessels prepared in order to hold this thing inside of it. Again, if we're going to look at the analogy of a nuclear reactor, you need to have something which is if I'm not mistaken, don't get me on that, I'm not a nuclear scientist or technician, but I think the dome usually over a nuclear reactor is something like maybe 3 feet of solid concrete, or maybe even more, just to be able to hold this massive thing from the radiation that comes. I mean, it's a crazy thing. That's Yaakov and Esav. So the reactor, the whole building, is the kli that holds this like wild energy inside, with few rods inside the water and so on and so forth. But that's exactly it. So Yitzchak, and Yitzchak know that, and along the way of their lives, there's a lot of like real sincere and truthful efforts trying to make them work together. And Yitzchak, in his way, is trying to create a certain partnership between his sons. So he gives Yaakov his tradition of spiritual tradition, which was given to him by Avraham Avinu, and he gives Esav what we call Birkot HaAdama, the blessing of the land, which are the more materialistic. So he gives spirituality to Yaakov and materialism to Esav. But here all of a sudden we have a lady that comes in, and then is Rivka, aka Rebecca, right? Rivka, I love the name Rebecca, by the way. So she comes into the picture, and Esav is still very raw, he's very rough, he's unrefined, is too shapeless. He's in a field. You can contain him. He's in the field. So she comes in and she understands that he's too unreliable in order to count on him to do that work of trying to put this together, and therefore she knows that if they're going to give them the baracha mital hashamayim umishamnei haaretz, as it says, it's going to be another explosion. We can have an uncontrolled chain reaction. It's going to be an explosion. So therefore she does what she does, and she gives the thing to Yaakov. Right, Idan? So if they would have allowed Esav to marry, for example, what's her name, Leah, which was his designated soulmate, as Yaakov was designated to Rachel, right? So therefore the brothers, which are brothers, but now would return also brothers-in-law, brothers and brothers-in-law, right? They would share together the establishment of the world and the establishment of Am Yisrael. In other words, Am Yisrael would not have come directly from Yaakov. Am Yisrael would come also from Esav, because that's what had to happen. But Leah cried, and she cried, and she cried, and she cried herself so much until her eyes had weakened. And it's not the thing. I know somebody that lost his, my mother's uncle. He basically, when his son was killed on the Yom Kippur War in 1973, he basically cried himself to blindness. And so I could understand. When I was a kid, I thought it was like, it's exaggeration sometimes. But then I saw him and I realized what, it really could happen. So she cried and so on and so forth. And at the end, as we all know, that Yaakov received both women. And together with both women, he received also both brachot, an indication that your bracha is dependent on your wife. So therefore, be very careful who you pick up as a wife. And all those 12 tribes, came about from Yaakov Avinu, and not 6 and 6 from Esav and Yaakov. So when Yaakov is coming back from Haran, it looks like he is ready to do the next big step. He is ready to really make things happen, start rolling the dice, as they say. So he sends Esav messengers, and he gives him gifts, and he's trying to re-engage with him, all over again. But the night before he's actually meeting Esav physically, he meets with the angel of Esav, which is really called the spirit of Esav. He met with the spiritual entity of Esav. And they had a fight. And they had a struggle. And, Yaakov fights with him, and at the end Yaakov wins. And because he won, he's able to make that angel of Esav to give him something else in return as well. I want the brachot, and also I want the name Israel. Thank you very much. I'll take it, because names are very important. So from now on, officially and undoubtedly, the name Israel would belong only to Yaakov, and the brachot will officially, without any other claim, belong again only to Yaakov, and will not go to Esav as well, because he fought with him. And the morning after, if it was always a morning after, the brothers actually meet physically. So, but that meeting didn't really turn up to be the way it could have turned up to be. It wasn't that great. Both of them know that the real fight or the real meeting already happened, and it happened the night before. And it was really a battle, and there was a definite winner, that was Yaakov, and that meeting was not, the result of the meeting was not unification and harmony, but rather a battle and a winner. So Yaakov takes, he knows that, and Yaakov takes his daughter Dinah, right, and he locks her up in a box or whatever, in order to prevent Esav marrying Dinah. By doing so, he takes the opportunity that his daughter will take upon herself the task in which her mother refused to take. So he's eliminating their chance. However, ultimately he loses Dinah to a Canaanite prince. Maybe his name was Eliababu, I don't know, but he loses her to that Canaanite, to the prince. So now what happens is Yaakov and Esav are seeing one another, and they're hugging, and they're kissing. But this is only superficial. It's completely superficial. Esav invites Yaakov to go with him. He says, come, let's hang around together, let's live together. And Yaakov is saying, I don't know, let me ask my wife, we have children, it's too late. You go and I'll come back. And by doing so, in a way, also loses an opportunity to initiate something together. And that was probably the last time that they met, besides when it was the funeral of the father, later on when they died, because we know that both of them died the same thing. Esav's heads roll next to because he was beheaded, his head rolls next to Yitzchak, and Yaakov is being buried in Ma'arat HaMachpelah, right there, the same place. So therefore the effort to unify the Tohu, the world of chaos, with the Tikkun, with the fix-up, continues further after the death as well by the nations of Edom and Israel. And we see that. I mean, I don't want to go too haywire with that, because I'm going to get some hate messages and hate mails and whatever it is. But think about the ancestors of King David. Why is King David so important in I would say even human history? Is because somewhere deep down in King David, David HaMelech, there is a combination of Moab, Edom, right? Edom and Moab, and Yaakov. That's where the Tikkun comes. That's why Mashiach comes from Beit David. Because somewhere inside it holds this thing together. So, by Am Yisrael and Edom, we know we have of course we have stories like this before. We spoke about it last week, right? It was I think last week we spoke about Rebbe and who? Antonius, right? That's how you call it. And we also see that first there were 8 kings of Edom before there was a king in Israel. So we need to understand that we are really together. So the forces of Tohu, that sheer forces that represented by Esav, could ignite quickly. They're very quick. And it's like redhead, they're quick to ignite and so on. But Bnei Israel, so they went in and they right away they put the kings and they put 8 kings in place and so on and so forth. But Bnei Israel take a different turn. Bnei Israel, the job is, I guess, to wait. And maybe this is our thing also. We need to understand that a part of the overall tikkun, we need to have some patience. All you need is just a little patience. Right? And Bnei Israel therefore go for 40 years in the desert, and all of a sudden the trip that they had for 40 years in the desert takes a totally different meaning. Because it's the process of patience. We need to mature. So they went through a process of maturization, just like a good whiskey. You put it in a barrel, it gets good. Take whiskey, you put it 40 years in a barrel, that's superb quality right there. And when they went to the desert, they were representative of the power, of the vessels that need to contain the power. That's what they were giving the Torah. The Torah are tools, the mitzvot of the Torah. The Torah is the manual of how to fix the world. So therefore, it's kind of selfish, stupid, and ignorant on anybody's behalf to say, I'm sorry, I don't want to keep mitzvot. I don't want to keep Torah. This is not to control your mind. That's some kind of propaganda that somebody came out, that doesn't want to do it and doesn't know why it does it. It comes up with some propaganda, some fake news that it comes up with, as they say. But the mitzvot and the Torah is the manual of to fix the world. The mitzvot are the tools to actually reach that tikkun, that fix-up. So they go to Har Sinai, there of course receive the Torah and so on and so forth. And by having the Torah, we spoke about it in the morning, about the influence that Jewish law had, for example, on a great composition as the American Constitution. And the original spirit of what the United States of America was supposed to be. And together with that, the introduction of freedom to the world and fighting for freedom, represented by the United States. And now you understand why is it not so good that we are abandoning our path in terms of an American nation, because we are giving power again to the forces of Esav versus to the vessels of Yaakov. And maybe the United States could be an example of how things could happen if we're going to come to, in theory at least, of how things will come up if we'll be able to create a utopian world. It's a secular metaphor of how it should be. When you have a constitution, and how do you have the Torah? You have equal rights. Everybody's equal by, in the eyes of the law, and everybody has a right to speak, and so on and so forth. So, what do we really get from this time of the meeting between Esav and Yaakov? So it's quite fascinating, because Chazal learns from that how should we deal when there is a bad thing or something bad about to happen in our way. So we need to be ready, and we need to prepare for 3 things. You can't just sit there and say, I don't know, it's all emunah. No, that's not good enough. When something bad is coming, when you see the shadow of bad things happening, you've got to get ready. You have to. And what do? So what we do is, they call it doron, which is a gift, and I wouldn't say an appeasing gift, but something to try to bring words of peace first of all. And that's the same thing when we're coming into a siege. The Torah tells us, first of all, you don't come into a city and you say, okay, we're going to kill you all, we're going to butcher you all. No, v'karata alea leshalom. You call peace. Guys, listen, we don't want to spill anybody's blood. Let's make peace first of all. And that's what the Torah tells us. So we have to bring him a gift, right? And then we have to pray, and then we have to prepare for war. And Yaakov Avinu does a psychological apparatus that really combines and constitutes of this thing, that really was the reason behind that apparatus is to really soften that Esav, and to really in a way gain control over his reaction, because he knows he's like dynamite, he's like nitroglycerin, So the gift that Yaakov sent them, he sends them gifts. That's the Doron, right? He sends them, camels and cattle and all kind of stuff like that. Being ready for war, Yaakov does something which is very important. He splits his camp into two. He says, okay, we're not going to go heads in with everything. We're going to split it. If he's going to attack, at least the other one, whoever is going to attack, the other side is going to be able to escape. And of course, he does the tefillah and he prays. And the tefillah of Yaakov should really be a model, or like it should be a model for us to follow how tefillah is. His tefillah, his prayer, is very detailed and is very reasoned. He tells you, I need this, and the reason I need it is because of that. So you learn from here also how to pray. And it is very focused, and it connected one to another. It's a flow of things. And you don't really need to understand much. It's just there. He says it and you know what he's talking about. It's very organized. So one of the reasons maybe that our prayers are not answered the way the Avot or Yaakov Avinu is because our tefillot are not organized. We want something. What's it going to find? Why do you want it? Well, I don't know. I just want it. Well, that's very nice that you just want it. Unless you're going to reason me, and the reason is going to be a good reason, a reasonable reason, I'm not giving it to you. And we went through this many times. For example, somebody says, I want to get married. I said, good, why do you want to get married? Well, I don't want to be alone. Well, get a poodle, get a goldfish, I don't know. Get a Barbie doll, I don't know. Not alone, I mean, you know what I'm saying, yeah? So, and so on and so forth. You have a Barbie doll? Oh, okay.
That is cool.
So, and we could see it in the meeting that they had, Yaakov and Esau, when they met together. It also represents a certain internal struggle that we all have inside of us, each and every one of us, which we spoke about it before in the past, between the body and the soul, between spiritual materialism, the Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara, and so on and so forth. And you have to understand, we need the Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara needs to be there. In other words, you cannot distinguish between Yetzer Tov. If you don't have Yetzer Hara, you have something to compare one to another. It needs to be, but it needs to be under control. It needs to be confined. So if the neshama is going to be Yaakov, so the body is going to be Esav. So we learn and we know that in our world, priority is usually given to the body, right? You see, a nice figure, you go after. You don't care that inside in the coconut, there's nothing there. You see a nice looking car, it could be a garbage car, but it's a nice car, and so, especially if you have those big mufflers that make a lot of noise and the cars don't go anywhere, it's like an explosion. Like, well, what do you mean? I mean, it's so funny. Car manufacturers make those engines to sound perfect, and it comes like, a little hoodlum and puts those big mufflers that sounds like somebody throwing firecrackers into the engine. It's like, what's wrong with you guys? Anyway, so that's why, so the priority is given to the body. And in order to gain control of that, the neshama needs to steal the show from the body. You need to do that. You need to be tricky about it. The Zohar teaches us that Yaakov Avinu sends Esav matanot and bows for him 7 times when he meets him, and immediately he also threatens Esav. We don't know that, but he threatens Esav. And what is happening here? He says to him, listen, all my money I made by Lavan. And Lavan was the big magician. He was the number one mafiosi at the time. He was the capo de tutti capi. He was the, faccia bruta of the East. He was the man to reckon with, right? Actually, not to reckon with. You didn't want to deal with the guy. And he says, all the money, everything I got here, you see everything I got here, boy? I got it from Lavan. So he's basically threatening us out. He said, because if I took it from Lavan, guess what? I can finish you in 2 seconds. But yet he's bowing down to him. So he's basically throwing him off balance. So if you have an enemy, that's how you do it. It's you need to throw him off balance, right? And when he starts praying, when Yaakov starts praying, he's being charged now with certainty and spiritual power that it's really projecting out outside, and it's being and you see a person that is strong, internally strong, and it comes out. Esav looks at that and he's completely confused. Why? Because if he just finished up Lavan, he can finish me, right? So why is he sending me gifts? Like, I don't understand that, right? And he bows down to him 7 times. Esav all of a sudden feels a little bit, it's okay, feels good, my brother bows down to me. How many times? He says 1, 2, very nice. 1 more time, 7, very good. He bows 7 times, he bowed down to me. Now he goes to tell all his chevra, he puts it on Instagram and Twitter. Yaakov bowed down to me 7 times. It feels good. So he doesn't feel humiliated or threatened, because if he would have feel humiliated or threatened, his raw energy would explode and would destroy everything all over again. Okay? And you see also from when we see it in a way, which I forgot to say, but we see in Yitzchak Avinu, what we always say it as I think we look at it the wrong way. Yitzchak Avinu says, "Hayadayim yedei Esav, akol kol Yaakov, hayadayim yedei Esav." In his perfect world, the voice of the soul of Yaakov is going to come out, and the ability of Esav will do it. That's the olam, that's the tikkun olam. Not like we got used to think that the nations are evil or wicked and so on and so forth. If you think so, you are wrong. If you think so, you are wrong, because you will never going to be able to fix the world like that. We need everybody on board with us. And we need to utilize their power and their power. And yes, we need somebody to build buildings, we need somebody to make roads, we need somebody to plant, we need somebody to learn. But if the philosophy professors will work in the gardeners would learn philosophy, and I don't think there's much chance. Or if everybody learns philosophy, nobody plants, cucumbers and tomatoes and potatoes, we're all going to stop. We're going to eat books. Somebody needs to do it. Therefore, it doesn't mean that if a guy is a plumber or he's a farmer or he's a gardener, he is inferior to a doctor or to a psychologist, whatever it is, philosopher and so on and so forth. No, absolutely not. We need doctors, we need this one. I want to see you in a world without doctors. I want to see you in a world without plumbers. I mean, with all due respect to all the doctors, but I don't think any gastroenterologist can actually put a pipe, he can fix other pipes, human pipes, but not pipes in the house. It's not going to work. We need everybody. So therefore, don't feel so superior, because his job is just as good as your job, or as important as your job. And he has skills you don't have. Maybe a guy can do operations in the brain working with robots, but he cannot hang a picture on the wall. Can put a nail to a nail. You could have a Supreme Court judge, genius, can write books, 700 books, 700 pages on the Constitution. But I don't know if the guy knows how to change a gasket or to change a light bulb. So who's more important? Everybody's important. So I see it in the way that Yitzchak Avinu said, "Akol kol Yaakov hayadayim yedei Esav." It should be in that order. First of all, we need the spiritual to come up, but that's basically what it is. So at that moment that Yaakov was able to throw Esav off his game, he confused him. He bowed down to him, he threatened him, he made him feel important. So all of a sudden, he's off balance. Since he was off balance, right, he hugs him. He hugs him with all his heart. And Rashi, according to Midrash Rashbi, says, "Vayeretz Esav likrato vayechabkeu," when he ran to him and he hugged him. You would expect from Esav to hug Yaakov? So Chazal says, no, that cannot be. So he wanted to really bite him, and he did some qigong, and his neck turned into... I think no, he was able to really see the fact that this guy is my brother. And I love him. And I want to hug him. And we need to see things like that. And maybe if we would see the fact that everybody, all humans, are a part in what we call creation, because all the neshamot came from Adam HaRishon. All the souls came from this one entity. It's called Adam HaRishon. So therefore, we all partners in creation. We just designated different jobs. So when and I do believe that he came sincerely to hug and kiss him. Because when you come from a place of love, when you come from a place of love, when you come from a place of light, when you come from a place of giving up, not giving up on okay, I'll give up, do whatever you want. I'm giving up on my ego, on my self-importance, and together with that, I come from a place of strength, which Yaakov Avinu did. You can really overcome what we call common sense. For example, I don't know, Arabs had Jews, Jews had Arabs, Christians had this one, the other one hates the other one, which is really what the Yetzer Hara wants to do. So you need to be able to take this energy and confine it and actually do something good with it. And all of a sudden, when you do that, you come from a place of love, from a place of selflessness, not selfishness. All of a sudden, all the cheshbonot that you had, all the calculation you had before, all the hatred that you had, all the vengeance that you want to go on, all of a sudden everything goes away. And when that happens, you can really see miracles happen. You could see a utopian world. And we need to understand that our job is to do so. When and you see Chachamim, those great Chachamim, always came from a place of love, not from a place of judgment and din and hatred. Hatred is not for us. Hatred is something that you should remove from yourself. So, and you see that the conflict continues later on between Judea, and Rome, and so on and so forth, between the spirit and materialism, between law and order to uncontrolled desires and urges. And that solution is only going to come when instead of putting all this effort into who is going to overpower the other, we're going to take all this power and we're going to put it to what we call tikkun olam. And for that, it says in Sefer Ovadia, Perek Aleph, Pasuk Chaf Aleph, Ve'alu Mosheim Be'ar Tzion Lishpot et Har Esav. Only at that point, Vaya Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz, Vayom hahu yeh Hashem echad, u'shmo echad. At that day, when Mazam Mosheim, what's Mosheim?
Saviors.
Saviors. Yeah. What will happen? Ya'alu Behar Tzion. They're going to come back to Zion, and not Bob Marley Zion, right? Lishpot et Har Esav. In order, lishpot, you said to judge, but I tell you also to give the mishpat, to show the laws of the beauty of the Torah, of the Tikkun Olam to the nations. Only then we can make Hashem Melech HaKol Haaretz, king all over the land. And then God's name is going to be one, that God God is God for all nations, for all people, all over again. And that's our job. That's the way I see it. And I think it's about time that we should stop being childish and we should really take responsibility and follow those examples that Yaakov Avinu gave us, that was, I think, initiated in the creation of the world to really make it happen. Because guys, time goes by. And if we're not going to make the change now, just wasted our lives. So instead of just getting angry at things and getting, whatever it is and hating this one, just let go. And let God and direct your effort, save your effort for construction, not for destruction. And that happy note, boys and girls. By the way, don't forget, if you have any questions, to send it to rabbigaon@gmail.com if you want to help the yeshiva, because we do need help. We are up to a critical part in the existence of the yeshiva, so we do need help. You can go to our website at yeshivaetzion.com, and there is a PayPal account, or you can do so on Venmo and any other things. That will be greatly appreciated and will really help us continue doing the Tikkun Olam. And if you like what you just heard, so don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And